Our cultural heritage shapes our identities and connects us across generations. It also reminds us to live and not just survive. Yet, in the face of globalization, these precious aspects of our history are increasingly at risk of being lost. This is the issue at hand today on Hude Hour, here on Hude Network, where we delve into critical topics in the global development space. I am Amadine Ugbewe.
And I am Joan Eze. It's good to have you. You are absolutely welcome. Cultural heritage aids individual and collective identities, but its preservation is challenged by rapid globalization. This includes urbanization, tourism pressures, and even the commercializations of traditions.
Today, we'll shine a light on the efforts to safeguard cultural heritage, particularly under Sustainable Development Goal 11.4. This target calls for strengthening international cooperation to preserve cultural and natural heritage worldwide. We'll also explore global stories that showcase the state of cultural preservation today. But first, here's a look at our top headlines. World Monuments Fund launches 2024 projects. Nigeria and US sign MOU for Cultural Heritage Project. Ghana celebrates first day of intangible cultural heritage. Now, those are our headlines. We'll dive into the stories after the break. Welcome back. Cultural preservation is a critical component of sustainable development, especially as laid out in Goals 11 and 17 of the 2030 Agenda. Goal 11.4 specifically advocates for conserving heritage in the face of global development pressures. According to UNESCO, over 1,000 World Heritage Sites are currently endangered by factors such as climate change, urban development, and mass tourism. The need for stronger policies and international cooperation has never been more urgent.
Many communities are seeing intangible heritage, such as languages, dances, and oral traditions, shift toward more globalized lifestyles to cultural preservation. But achieving these goals will require coordinated efforts from government, private sectors, and local communities alike.
The numbers indicate the urgency, and we'll unpack them further after this break. Stay with us. The World Monuments Fund has announced its 2024 project initiatives aimed at preserving cultural heritage sites impacted by crises in Ukraine and Turkey. In Turkey, the WMF will focus on recovery efforts in Ankara, which was devastated by a 7.7 magnitude earthquake. The projects will support the restoration of the Antioch Greek Orthodox Church and the Antioch Synagogue, backed by the US Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation. In Ukraine, the WMF plans to restore the glass dome of the Teacher's House in Kyiv, a historic landmark that symbolizes modern Ukraine statehood, following damage from ongoing military conflict. Additionally, the WMF is launching a $15 million climate heritage initiative to address the impacts of climate change on cultural heritage sites worldwide. Projects will include restoring historic water systems in India, improving water access in Nepal, and rehabilitating traditional dams in Peru. The organization is also supporting Bears Ears National Monument in the US and is undertaking a major project at the Portugais de Roi Garden at the Palace of Versailles, focusing on climate adaptation practices for the historic gardens. Well, I think it's pretty clear there. The World Monuments Fund is something that we see is focused on not just the aspect of survival of humanity, but how we live. And that's the whole point of what we're talking about today, cultural preservation, because just as we have different wants for different people, we have basic human rights where people need to survive, the basic needs of life, shelter, food, and others.
Yeah.
But then, after you've been able to achieve those things, you need to have true living, and that's where culture, how people interact with one another, how these physical sites also have
Effect.
effect and have great significance to humans. Because at the end of the day, what's really the difference between us as a higher species than, let's say, the animals in the Serengeti or in the forest and all of that? Because those animals, they live for to survive, they eat, breed and all of that. But there's more to that for the human existence. And that's why we're seeing this monument fund trying to go to places like Ukraine where we've had conflicts, and then other places where there's been natural disasters also, so and climate change. So it's interesting, and I think it's important that we know that as human beings, there's more to us than just our basic necessities.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move straight up to the next news item we have. The Nigerian and US government have signed a memorandum of understanding for a cultural heritage preservation project at the Sukkur UNESCO World Heritage Site, I beg your pardon, in Adamawa State. The project, supported by the US Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation, AFCP, will focus on documenting, conserving, and enhancing the Sukkur cultural landscape. In partnership with the Nigerian Ministry of Art, Culture, and Creative Economy, Ahmadu Bello University, American University of Nigeria, and ICOMOS Nigeria. The initiative aims to strengthen the local craft, infrastructure, and preservation of the Sakun language. Since 2001, the AFCP has invested $1.5 million in 14 cultural projects across Nigeria. US Charge d'Affaires David Green praised the ongoing partnership, highlighting the importance of preserving Nigerian heritage and threats of climate change and insurgency. He also noted the recent repatriation of 63 Benin bronzes, with 22 returned in 2022. The Minister of Art, Hanatu Musawa, emphasized that the project would preserve both the tangible and intangible heritage of Sukkur, enhancing community resilience and international cultural ties. Well, this is what we're talking about, preservation. I think that's the key word, what we're talking about right now. And the Minister of Arts and Culture has thought it very important that this tangible and intangible cultural heritages should be preserved. This brings me back to how we defined culture back then in secondary school and primary school. That culture is the way of life and people. It talks about how people live their life, how they eat, how they dress, how they converse, and what is culture, and what is culture without the human race, and what is the human race without culture. So if this culture is or goes into extinction, I'm yet to understand how the human race would look like. So it is important for our culture, our traditions, our crafts to be preserved. Just from what we just saw in the news item, that 22 items were returned in the Benin Empire, or the former Benin Empire, the Benin city right now, and more are yet to be returned. So we look forward to seeing that our culture, our tourism, our crafts, our infrastructures are not gone away.
People need to get back what was truly theirs from the start. And I think that's part of what we should see more with these kinds of agreements between countries that have access to the key aspects of the culture of others. And then that being said, like you said, culture is very important. And one of the reasons why, if someone could say, because as we speak in those states in Benin, there are still bronze works being made every day. And that's fair enough, but that's adding to the history, or pardon me, the journey that we have to go on. But as a wise man once said, if we don't know our past, how can we know where we are headed? So it's important that even though we still have access to some of those things right now, we need to know our origins, and we need that to be available. Which I think this also needs to go into perhaps our schools, but we'll talk more on that later. So we'll go on a break now. When we return, we'll delve into our final news item before we have our guest over. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Ghana held its first International Day of Intangible Cultural Heritage, the ICH, in Accra focusing on socio-economic importance of preserving living traditions. Organized by the National Folklore Board, the NFB, with UNESCO support, the event brought together cultural leaders, government officials, and stakeholders under the theme The Socio-Economic Benefits of Living Heritage in Ghana. NFB Chair Professor Abdullahi Salifu emphasized the role of Ghana's ICH customs, oral histories, performing arts, and rituals as a cornerstone of national identity. He warned of risk posed by globalization and modernization, calling for proactive efforts to safeguard these traditions. Executive Director of the NFB, Mrs. Bernice Ann De Huma, highlighted the event as a milestone in Ghana's cultural preservation efforts. She announced a digital platform being developed with UNESCO to document and share ICH and emphasize the importance of youth involvement in blending tradition with technology to sustain heritage. She also noted Ghana's nomination of Kente weaving for UNESCO recognition, which will be reviewed in December later. Madam Arma Sawa, the Secretary General of Ghana's Commission for UNESCO, highlighted the economic contributions of traditional practices like kente weaving, bead making, and palm wine tapping, noting their impact on tourism and job creation. The event coincided with a global UNESCO discussion on artificial intelligence and its role in safeguarding intangible cultural heritage. Well, there you have it. Ghana is trying to improve this culture by giving it an actual day.
Yeah.
And our intangible cultural heritage just speaks to traditions and the things that we know and say, not perhaps particularly physical locations thereabouts. But what I particularly drew my curiosity and attention there is the theme was on the economic benefits. And I think that's an interesting aspect that we'll delve into later to get to understand how culture and preservation can lead to economic benefits. Because, like I always say, sometimes people need monetary incentives to understand that there's more to this than meets the eye. So I think that's an interesting way. And I hope we can get to see more of that across. We know back then in school we have culture day and stuff like that.
Yeah, where people
it's
come
good to
together.
have more of this.
Yeah, you just took me. I'm having this nostalgic feeling of when we go back then. We'll put on different cultural attires. You know, I like the fact the kente weaving, the bead making, the palm wine tapping. Imagine, my offspring teaching them how to tap wine. I look forward to that actually.
All right, I do too. I'd like to see you tapping wine. Let's see what that looks like. Anyway, we'll go on a break now. When we return, we'll be joined by our guest. She is, as you can see there, Aisha Aliyu-Bima. She's the Director of Arts, African School of Economics. She joins us to do justice to the matter and really break down the issue of cultural preservation. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Every day, amazing stories of hope and tenacity unfold across the globe. On Hude Hour, we dive into these inspiring tales and discuss the vital work being done in the humanitarian and development space. Humanity has never faced a shortage of challenges, yet we rise stronger through teamwork and determination. Though these remedies are often underreported, on Hude Hour, we advocate sustainable solutions. We bring you the latest and most impactful news on how lives are being changed. We engage with young change makers and experts who provide valuable insights into relief efforts and the challenges faced by local communities through a global perspective. Join us every Wednesday by 8 a.m. on Hude Network's YouTube channel as we embark on this journey of positive change.
Hey everyone, let's face it, our world today experiences numerous challenges. And guess what? Our community isn't off the hook either. Most of the world issues are either not talked about enough or never talked about at all. But here on Timeline, we've got you covered. We dive deep into issues that affect us every day, leaving behind footprints of wisdom, knowledge, and solutions. Think of it like a roadmap that keeps you on the track for success. So buckle up, because in this new season of Timeline, we're taking another trip through the past, the present, and navigate into a more promising future. Again, we're talking solutions, people, and let's make one thing clear. This is not your average blah 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 convo. This is real talk with a side of inspiration and a sprinkle of wow. I never thought about it like that. I'm your host on this impactful ride. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff, laugh a little, and find ourselves on the path to positive change. So what are you waiting for? Season 2 of Timeline will be loaded. Let's get started. Hop in and let's drive straight into the heart of issues shaping our world. Let's go. Oh, one more thing. Hit that subscribe button and let's take this ride together.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is still Hude Hour on Hude Network. We have been talking on the issue of cultural preservation, and we have someone very important join us now to give us more dimension to this matter. We've been joined by Aisha Aliyu-Bima. She is the Director of Arts at the African School of Economics. She joins us now to break down this issue. Welcome to the program.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Good
Thank
to
you
have
for
you.
having me.
All right, so let's start at the idea in the first place for why exactly cultural preservation is so important. I would say this because of the way some persons might look at it. Culture is just some people dancing and whatnot. Is it going to put food in my belly? Is it going to, help me with housing and all of that? So let's start at that. The very reason why cultural preservation is so important.
I think, as you said in your question, the greatest misconception is that culture is something historical, but it's something that's present in the way that we live, in the way that we relate to our environments. We dance a certain way because of the environment that we have. We eat a certain way because of the environment that we find ourselves in, all the way to how we build homes. We build our homes a certain way because of the environment that we find ourselves in. We tend to have larger windows because we live in a warm climate. We wear lighter clothing, more colorful clothing because we live in a cooler climate. No matter in a warmer climate, sorry. No matter how the world evolves and changes, we cannot there are certain things that we cannot export and force upon ourselves. We cannot wear heavy winter jackets in this weather, for example, no matter how much globalization occurs. So that culture is very essential to help us navigate the world. And it's even more important that we preserve it in the face of globalization, because it is very important for things like our health. For example, if you look at the food our ancestors eat versus the food that we eat, and now we're seeing like a huge diabetes burden and all of these changes that have come with a lot of the newer foods that we've introduced into our diet. Recording that information helps us to go back and see, oh, okay, this is how our ancestors eat. This is what we can bring into the future with us to help us live a healthier life. So the applications of cultural preservation are very, very broad.
All right, fair enough. Let's talk about intangible culture now, cultural heritage. Under this, we have the languages, the traditions. If you come to the recent time, I mean the Gen Z generation now, if you speak their dialect to them, they don't really know how to respond. This is to show that languages, traditions are going into extinction. What are those strategies or policies that you feel can be, brought up to revive this intangible cultural heritage?
I think one of the most important thing we can do for languages and intangible heritages is to archive them, to document them. This is something that is essential to the work that we do at the African School of Economics, the arts department, and we work with a lot of government players as well to make sure that we record as much as possible, we document, we create translation documents, that will enable the future generations. One thing about culture is that it evolves. It's when you can try as much as possible to introduce it to the younger generation. But if you look at Nigerians today, many of us are not like Nigerians of the past. You find children with an Igbo parent and a Yoruba parent and a Hausa parent. How many languages can we realistically expect those children to learn in that period? That's sometimes why we experience this cultural loss. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. However, when we archive and we document and we give those that are willing to learn the ability through digital technologies to learn them and to access that information, I think that's the best thing we can do. We can't stop the ball from rolling, but we can, try to capture the rolling. Yeah.
Indeed, that's very interesting, bringing that up, because I think one of the interesting in one of our traditions or culture is that particularly in Nigeria and other African nations, is the issue of oral traditions. Things were usually said from mouth to mouth. He says, she said. So that aspect of documentation, you've spoken on what you're doing, but I don't know if you can really break down how big a problem it might be. Because, take for instance, if I want to find out something in the Western world I just have to Google. But most times, if I want to find something very niche that happened in Nigeria or in Ghana or in Sierra Leone, a Google search might not be enough. I might have to go on the ground and do all of that. So, what's the scope of the issue that you've seen so far in your own experience?
Honestly, we have a long way to go, of course, compared to, again, our contemporaries in the global north, in the Western countries. However, it's documentation, archiving is a very expensive process. I think that is the first challenge that we experience traveling to all of these places, recording the necessary information, bringing a team of translators and researchers. Because as much as oral traditions are important, when you're documenting it, you also have to ensure it is as accurate as possible, or that you have other material that you can reference to, confirm the historicity of all of these stories. So it's always a very huge project. And again, the expense is the biggest challenge. But I think one exciting thing that I have found working in Nigeria and in other parts of Africa is that there's so many people now realizing the importance of this and coming together to do the work. In Kaduna, we have the Open Arts Foundation, who have the Hausa International Books and Arts Festival, where they study like Hausa culture and all the adjacent cultures it interacts with. We have Uzoma Oji here in Abuja. He's a digital technologist, and he's creating digital technologies and internet and a way of using the internet that brings ancestral knowledge into that. So even just by going on the website and interacting, children, younger people, even adults can immediately experience those ways of transmitting that knowledge. And then on the government part as well, we have a lot of the government agencies now being very focused and intentional about collaborating with private partners to do this type of documentation. Yeah.
That's fair enough. Particularly when you speak about the expense of this, my question now is, for the local communities, what's their role in this? The people who have this knowledge and this culture that want to preserve it, what can they do and how can they be included in this whole process?
I think the most important thing that I've seen them do is accept people who sort of have the technical know-how with open arms and provide them access to those stories, to that information. Because sometimes when you find communities that are hostile to maybe outsiders trying to record that information, and sometimes for good reason, right? Because sometimes people approach you, they do not have the right documentation. You give them access to ancestral knowledge, to something so important to your culture, and they do not take care of it the right way. However, when people in the community verify the authenticity of like these people coming in and they welcome them or even inviting them in. I think younger people in every community now in Nigeria, there's not a single one where there's no young person with his smartphone or that knows. So if those young people, have access to these things and they reach out to people, or sometimes it's as easy as just recording a TikTok video of your cultural festival and posting it, and someone sees it from another part of Nigeria and it piques their interest and they go and they cover it. So that's just really what we can do. As much as possible, share, as much as possible, talk about our cultures, as much as possible, be proud of like our culture wherever we are. And when we speak about it with pride, I think it always translates and the right people will sort of always find you. Maybe I'm optimistic, but this is what I've seen and this is what
Okay,
continues to
you
work.
talked about posting, people being proud, getting information from their various sources. Just a personal question. I hope there is someone, or maybe as a team, that like fact check those information.
Yes, there are many. I wouldn't call it a fact check necessarily, but
Okay.
there are people that compile this information and sort of arrange it according to the historicity of it.
Okay.
And as I said, there are many resources now popping up that help us to, as researchers, as cultural workers, connect and refer to these things and see
Accuracy.
the accuracy and authenticity of those claims. A
Okay.
very interesting project is like the archiving project as well that is going on where they archive old Nigerian newspapers. And sometimes you find it an excellent source of reference for a lot of cultural festivals.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Let's move to the climate change. Climate change has really done a lot of things, in damaging our heritage, our tangible facts. Okay. So, what are those principles, or what do you think? I want you to kindly tell us what are those things you feel that can be done to preserve this tangible cultural heritage that we have.
I think the most important thing we can do is, first of all, identify all of these things. And then, some of them, as with every building in the world, climate change or not, it has to be restored, it has to be maintained. But when we've not even identified every single one of them officially in the first place, in some communities, they have all of these sites that are important to them, but there's no governmental record or there's no governmental record of its existence, and therefore there's no demarcation to say that okay, we need to protect this place, we need to see what the climate is doing to it, we need to see how much wear and tear the building, the monument is encountering. And so when we don't have that, it's not very easy to protect it. So I think the most important, identifying and then providing either the community with the knowledge or external bodies with the resources to maintain those structures.
All right, that's fair enough and an interesting one there. But like the topic says, we're talking about safeguarding heritage in the face of globalization. So let's talk about that. You spoke earlier about how you can't wear large coats because it's hot here. But interestingly enough, you see people trying to do that, and people just want to key into
The Western
some of what the West is doing and what the big the world powers are doing and all of that. So, how is it still possible to maintain identity, to maintain uniqueness when it seems as though everyone is headed in a particular direction? Uh, for instance, just a random personal observation now. So, how do you still manage to maintain when everyone else seems to be conforming?
I think one, globalization is something that cannot necessarily be stopped. But when you find more utility for your culture, then it becomes very popular. I'll give an example with the jalabia, for example, which is a Middle Eastern dress that men wear, and now you find them wearing it all over the world. As Middle Eastern culture continues to become more popular, you find footballers being taken to the Middle East wearing those cultures. People in the West are now copying that sort of style of dressing. So it's all about promoting your culture. It's all about embracing it. In the primary schools, they constantly have these cultural days, and in some of them, I've seen them assign like cultures to the kids to wear something different from that of their culture to help promote Nigerian cultures. I think fundamentally from the children, that is where you have to make young Nigerian children, young African children proud of their cultures, and you have to teach them to explore other cultures in Nigeria and in Africa. And I think when you do that from the jump, people grow up with a sense of pride of their cultures. At the same time, promotion. The Ojude Oba Festival, for example, last year or 2 years ago, there was that viral photograph and short video from that festival last year or early this year, I think we saw so many more people going there, so many more photographers, so many more media houses converging on the festival. And it's things like that that help promote and protect that heritage, because now you have a lot of people saying, come, where did this Ojude Oba start from? Where are the pictures of the previous generations? How has the clothing style changed? How has the food being served in festival changed? In fact, you have people looking at the data. How have the numbers attending the festival? And that's really the most that we can do in everything that we do. We promote our culture as much as possible, and then we hope that it will.
Okay, so the commercialization of cultural heritage actually threatens or questions our cultural authenticity rather. How can sustainable tourism practices, right, balance economic benefits with cultural integrity?
I think the most important thing when you're opening up cultural sites to people is to make sure the local community, first of all, understand the importance of that culture, understand why it is so important that you're even opening it up to people from the outside to come in. And I think when you do that, usually when you integrate the local community into whatever preservation, whatever archiving, whatever protection of culture that you want to engage in, then you've solved 50% of the problem, because when they see someone trying to overtly commercialize that, or trying to maybe shoot a music video in a place that has high cultural significance, before any security forces or whatever even brought, the people themselves put a stop to it, sometimes in a better way even than the security forces themselves can do it. So I really think the most important thing is engaging the local communities, the immediate communities that relate with that site. There's also the thing of trademarking, IP. Sometimes cultural heritage can be IP protected. And yeah, when you do that as well, you prevent external forces from coming to take advantage of maybe the language, the symbols, the clothing style, and then going to mass produce it and turn it into something else that erases that heritage. And then even again, having people from that community have the knowledge to speak about it when people are moving from appreciation of that culture to appropriation of that culture. So just having repeated conversations, I think, is what we can do.
That's really interesting. When you mention appropriation and appreciation is really important, because sometimes things can get a bit warped because people are so excited to key into your own culture. So that aside, you've already mentioned some issues with digital technology and all of that. If you could delve more a bit into that, we have the rise of artificial intelligence and other such disruptive technologies. Where do these play parts in ensuring that we don't completely let go of the past? Because people can really be, would I say, lured by the benefits of this thing. So how does that fit in? Can they work hand in hand, or are they polar opposites?
Oh, I absolutely think that they can work hand in hand. I think it's very important for us to work with new technologies and AI, VR technologies. Sometimes, for example, if you're able to get a full VR scan of a cultural heritage site where a natural disaster like an earthquake that you really cannot safeguard that site from happens and you lose the site, but you have that VR construction
of it. Virtual reality.
Yes, virtual reality. People can still go on to experience that site, even though the real site itself is demolished. Or it can also help architects rebuild the site to the model that of what existed. So I think those technologies, even with AI as well, when you train AI models with information about the past, I think it gives more accurate information. It gives more relevant information as well to the people. Right now, with a lot of AI technologies, we find that there's a huge lacuna in the knowledge that they have of African cultures, of African traditions, even of modern African cities. They do not have enough pictures. They do not have enough knowledge about it. So technologies that are working now can feed those AI models with that information to help the models be more receptive to our needs and to help them anticipate whatever we need to promote these cultures and to preserve them. Yeah, so I absolutely think they can and they should work hand in hand.
All right, thank you so much. But just to round up, your final thoughts on bringing young people into all of this, because we know that some of the custodians of these traditions are the older generation. And so that gap and all of that, how do you think that can work for the younger people? And then any other comments you have, generally advocacy or advice going forward?
I think that we must bring young people. We absolutely have to bring young people. In fact, have them as champions of any cultural preservation strategy that we have. Because, as I said, and from my work at the African School of Economics and the ethos of the ASC in general, is really to have young people engage with culture in the way that they think. It's all the way to architecture students realizing that bamboo, is a better material, or it has more tensile strength than steel, for example, and having them find ways to grow enough bamboo so that when we're constructing in the next few years in Nigeria, we don't have to rely so much on steel. We can have bamboo as a reasonable alternative. So when we bring young people into this, we help them to also find innovative and culturally based solutions to our problems. It's all the way to the way urban planners think about designing our cities that are realistic to our needs. It's all the way down to the way medical doctors think about the nutrition of their patients according to where they're from. So there is nothing that we can preserve. And who are we preserving it for, if not for the young people at the end of the day? So we just have to bring them in, sometimes, force it down their throats a little bit, but create avenues like we have at the ASC for young people while learning to really engage with culture as a tool of that learning, not as something archaic or something ancient, as something that can be carried very well into the future and can help us build the future of our dreams.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Aisha. It's been a pleasure having you, and really an eye-opening one. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I look forward to festivals. I don't know if you do festivals. Like maybe the young people can be tapping palm wine, maybe from the tree or something.
Oh yes, that's just on the last note. That's something that has been popping up more recently.
Oh really?
There's so many cultures, festivals popping up all around Nigeria. As I said, in a few weeks, there's the Hausa International Books and Arts Festival for the first time here in Abuja. This is third edition. It's been in Kaduna, Kano, and all of that. So bringing those festivals like around Nigeria as well, I think is a great way to engage. But there's so many more festivals happening. I think I can see a lot more happening in the art and culture calendar of Nigeria in the years to come.
We'll be there.
I look forward to having you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we take for this segment of the program. We're still talking on the issue of cultural preservation. We're going to break now. When we return to delve into our next segment. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Every day, amazing stories of hope and tenacity unfold across the globe. On Hude Hour, we dive into these inspiring tales and discuss the vital work being done in the humanitarian and development space. Humanity has never faced a shortage of challenges, yet we rise stronger through teamwork and determination. Though these remedies are often underreported, on Hude Hour, we advocate sustainable solutions. We bring you the latest and most impactful news on how lives are being changed. We engage with young change makers and experts who provide valuable insights into relief efforts and the challenges faced by local communities through a global perspective. Join us every Wednesday by 8 a.m. on Hude Network's YouTube channel as we embark on this journey of positive change.
Hey everyone, let's face it, our world today experiences numerous challenges. And guess what? Our community isn't off the hook either. Most of the world issues are either not talked about enough or never talked about at all. But here on Timeline, we've got you covered. We dive deep into issues that affect us every day, leaving behind footprints of wisdom, knowledge, and solutions. Think of it like a roadmap that keeps you on the track for success. So buckle up, because in this new season of Timeline, we're taking another trip through the past, the present, and navigate into a more promising future. Again, we're talking solutions, people, and let's make one thing clear. This is not your average blah 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 convo. This is real talk with a side of inspiration and a sprinkle of wow. I never thought about it like that. I'm your host on this impactful ride. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff, laugh a little, and find ourselves on the path to positive change. So what are you waiting for? Season 2 of Timeline will be loaded. Let's get started. Hop in and let's drive straight into the heart of issues shaping our world. Let's go. Oh, one more thing. Hit that subscribe button and let's take this ride together.
Welcome back. Well, there you have it. A conversation on cultural preservation is actually quite interesting. There's more to culture than we actually know, and it can actually be a source for income, joy, entertainment, and so much more. But now, this is our Verified Voices segment. Let's see what some key stakeholders are saying on the issue of cultural preservation and preservation of heritage. Let's take the first one now. That's from UNESCO there. We have, why is safeguarding our heritage so crucial? Our heritage serves as a reflection of our identity, offering symbolic, historical, cultural, and social value. We must unite in the preservation of our heritage and actively combat illicit trafficking. And I think this is another aspect of the conversation as we continue, that yes, the culture exists. Just like Aisha said, sometimes communities now have to even do IP, what's it called? Ensuring that they have ownership of it. So we have this trafficking that we mentioned now is a problem, because we're trying to preserve culture, and some persons have found ways to profit off of it at the expense of the owners of this culture. Like she mentioned, we now have appropriation instead of appreciation. So I think that is one of the reasons, like UNESCO has mentioned there, we need to stay clear of that and ensure that we stick to what we want to.
Yeah, this just opened my eyes that we have different kinds of trafficking. We have the human trafficking and the cultural trafficking. So this illicit trafficking that UNESCO is really talking about, for me, is a very right thing to do. It's the right sensitization, because our culture, our heritage is, of course, our identity. So let's try as much as possible to preserve it. To the next verified voice that we have. This is coming from UNESCO, Education, Sciences, and Culture. Empowering women's voices, preserving heritage. Indigenous languages are a treasure trove of culture, history, and identity. As we navigate a rapidly changing world, uplifting them is vital. Join the hashtag Indigenous Languages Decade movement, and that's where you have it. We are Indigenous hashtag. All right, this is very important, just like we just said. Preserving our culture. UNESCO is also saying it now on our verified voice. That is very important. And the mother tongue, just like they talked about. That's why I'm smiling, because women are very, very important in the aspect of preserving the culture, because we are more closer to the kids and we speak the languages more. And just like we talked about, Aisha said about the younger generations, remembering their culture, because the more they are growing, we're seeing the culture, the languages going into extinction gradually. Imagine you asking a child, how are you doing in their dialect, and he responds in culture to be restored.
Indeed, and I think people might start to understand that there's no such thing or nothing better than originality.
Yeah.
Even if with the issue of globalization, you've seen something in the Western world that you love, when the Western world wants to have a touch of different spices, they're not going to get people who are more like them. They're going to get true, original, traditional things. So I think people should really do their best to keep in touch with their tradition. So let's take a look now at our final verified voice. This is from UNESCO East Africa. It says UNESCO culture officers worldwide convened in Nairobi for crucial training on emergency preparedness, risk assessment, and the preservation of cultural heritage. We have hashtag culture protection, hashtag emergency training, hashtag emergency. Well, this is also what we talked about, using our culture, actively. That's what that refers to there. Because we're talking about emergency response preparedness, and we're talking about how culture can play a part in that. And I think it's an interesting one and innovative ways to see how you can reach the people better.
Yeah, other countries should also adopt this, not only in Nairobi. Other people should train officials, to make them prepared, maybe climate change, maybe flooding, all those kind of issues.
All right, John, just to put you on the spot quickly. In your own language, how do you say goodbye or bye for now?
Kachifo, or, I don't really know.
You said what?
I said Kodiechi, Kachifo. I'm from the southeast, actually.
So that is the way you said.
Yes.
Again, please.
Kachifo. Kachifo actually means good night.
Okay.
Kodiechi, Kodi Kayafuro. Something like that.
That's good enough. That's good enough. For me, it's Okinwa Zekbe. That's from Edo State. And that's why we say goodbye for today. Do join us once again. Every Wednesday, 8 a.m., we bring you more discussions within the humanitarian and development space. I'll see you next time. I am Amadi Nobewe. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for joining us. I am Joan Eze. Bye for now.